Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on tonight for the Planning Commission meeting. The majority of our planning commissioners will be with us virtually this evening. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Heather, as our planning chair, and she'll go ahead and start the meeting.
Great, thank you. It is 4:02 on May 28th. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll do a roll call of planning commission members present. I saw Steve on here, but
We need to know who's here.
you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think Steve is here. Jason Mariko,
Here.
David Yurch,
Here.
Ryan Hill.
Here.
Great. And then county commissioners, Commissioner Tharp,
Here?
Commissioner Lee,
Here,
and Commissioner Bullock.
he will be joining us shortly.
He's online.
And here I'll be in 4 minutes.
He's in his office.
Be right there.
We have minutes to approve for May 12th.
I move to approve the minutes.
Great. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any updates from staff?
Minimal updates from staff. I think we will be reaching out we're gonna start having topical discussions for the comp plan. They will be under kind of the headings of economic development, infrastructure, land use, and transportation, I believe are our 4 different buckets. And so we'll start having those very first high level kind of conversations with other stakeholders, and then we'll be diving in deeper and deeper as we start working towards our eventual goal of the creation of our new comprehensive plan. So I think that's just starting to create an awareness that we're going to be reaching out to the members of the Planning Commission on a more regular basis to have those conversations. And so June will be a month that we'll be looking to kick off a lot of those conversations. And so we'll be reaching out with the different opportunities to engage. So I think that would be the biggest item that I would have to share this evening, and then defer to Cece or Melissa if they have anything else to share. I don't think anything major.
I don't have anything.
Okay, great.
Okay. Awesome. We'll move down right on into new business. We have file 24-03, the Box Creek gravel mining conditional use permit, and I think staff has an update for us on that.
I do, thank you. And Katie, Todd is here with Titan, in case there are any questions, but the applicant, Titan, is requesting a continuation of this application to July 28th in order to have more time addressing the issues that were raised by the Planning Commission, the board, and the public a month ago on April 28th. And staff is working with CDOT and the county's traffic consultants at Kimley Horn to complete what they call a safety analysis for the intersection at County Road 10 and 24. So we're hoping that that will give us some more valuable information to work with CDOT on, so that this continuation period to July 28th should give us enough time to get that done, work with Titan around the findings of that, work with CDOT and see if it makes any difference in how they look at that intersection. It may and it may not, but at least we, can bring additional analysis to the table. So staff is recommending a motion to table file 2403 Box Creek gravel mining CUP to July 28th at 4 p.m.
I move to table file 2503 to July 28th.
2403.
2403, I'm sorry, yes, 2403.
I second.
Great, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Good, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move to file 25-10, which is the Veer Backcountry Site Plan Review. And I think I should have a script for that, and I was just looking.
I see it's right here on the table.
Hey, you wanna read it?
I mean, I can.
That would be great.
All right. Okay, the Lake County Planning Commission will now conduct a public hearing. This statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission has jurisdiction to conduct a public hearing on a backcountry site plan review under section 5.2.27.1 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the proposed site plan should be approved. In considering that matter, the commission will address the approval criteria set forth in section 5.2.27.1, letter D of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be as follows. 1, members of the commission will disclose any ex parte communications. 2, the county staff will make an initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any other persons either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the commission. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. Okay. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the planning commission and that there be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing and I wasn't expected to say that twice today, so portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The chair of the planning commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with the recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the decision of the commission. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, I will now ask that each planning commissioner member, if you have any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, please disclose them now. Heather Lind.
If I can unmute, yes, none.
Steve Jurich. David Jurich.
None.
None. Steve Stevens.
None.
Ryan Hill.
None.
Am I the last one? Jason Rufo. None. The county staff may make its initial presentation. Yay for me.
Very well done.
You're
Good
welcome.
job, Trina.
Well done.
That's a mouthful. stuff.
All right, well, good evening, good afternoon. This is the Beer Backcountry site plan application. And, it's being brought forward by Sam Beer, who's in our audience and, available to answer questions. The site is located almost on top of Weston Pass. It's 10.3 acres. You can see it in sort of the red outline. The Weston Pass Road bisects the, property. So the property is zoned backcountry, as required by this type of application. And the site plan review is part of how we, implement those regulations. So you can see in that, image below, kind of it's a large rectangle with the road cutting right across it. So, next slide, please. The site plan is, really, as you read, it's a 234 square foot cabin. As we expect and wanna see in the backcountry, the idea, the concept behind this is that it really has a minimal footprint overall. And as you may know, what's important about these is they're not permanent structures. So an owner is allowed to use it from 90 to 180 days a year. So it's not a full-time use. What we issue is a backcountry license for the use, it's not a building permit. So again, the structure is intended to have a really light touch on the land. So, and that is demonstrated, and you saw it in your staff report, that the exterior materials are natural looking log, however, they're not wood. So they're made out of a fireproof siding material with metal shingles for the roofing. So again, really, these have to be pretty self-sustaining. You know, emergency services aren't gonna be showing up anytime soon to help if something were to happen, so. No fencing is proposed, or really allowed in this type of location. There is a porch light, that will be required to be a full cutoff fixture. And we do review those, the building plans, if you will, not again as a building permit, but as a zoning document, and so we look at that really carefully. There are no known geologic, mining, or environmental hazards. We did get a question, I got a question yesterday from a property owner who I think is online and I'm sure will speak, but some concerns about maybe wetlands or floodplain, and this site is not in either of those types of designations, so it's not, there are no wetlands on this site and no floodplain. Next slide, please. A variance was approved on April 9th by our Board of Health, and that's required for anything that is not an OWTS. And so there is an incinerating toilet that is proposed and was approved for this cabin. And the applicant can kind of speak to some of the concepts behind that, but again, it's really, there's propane is used, because they actually incinerate the solids as part of this process. And so that propane tank is taken with them when they leave, so propane is not on site when the cabin is not being occupied. You also probably read in the staff report that Colorado Parks and Wildlife does designate this area as its highest quality habitat. So, I mean, we're talking the top of Weston Pass, this is where elk and bighorn sheep come to calve in the spring. And so, you know, they're very concerned about any sorts of impacts into this area. We also know that Weston Pass is heavily traveled, you know, winter and summer. So and you'll see a condition of approval that really addresses, you know, best management practices. You know, these aren't required, but they're strongly recommended as really being good stewards of this land. There's also, excuse me, a roof-mounted solar system. Again, a pretty light touch. It's with batteries using a 12 volt system. One of the things that we look at here is it can't be any type of solar cannot require a state permit, electrical permit, because that really kicks it into a building permit issuance. And that's not what these are. These need to be a much simpler structure, and so solar is something that will be part of the license. You know, we don't issue a building permit, we issue a backcountry license for these. So again, these elements will all be, particularly the solar system and the OW or the incinerating toilet are part of that license. Next one. So there are 5 conditions of approval. Gotta have an address, but clearly, what we've done is, and I don't know exactly where this will be, but, someplace down the hill, you know, at the intersection, there'll be an address that's posted with an indication of how far up the pass the building is actually located. So it could be found, it can be found, if necessary. And the second one has to do with a noxious weed management plan. The Soil Conservation District does make recommendations. I got some of those recommendations yesterday, and that'll be part of the practice of occupying this land. I mentioned what Colorado Parks and Wildlife, what they talked about in terms of best management practices. The Lake County Fire Rescue has a few requirements, those were in your staff report, they're pretty standard comments that are necessary to occupy this structure, and then the last condition is any other statements that are made as part of the record tonight. So with that, staff is recommending this favorably with conditions. And the planning commission is the one who makes a determination on this, does not go to the board, so we appreciate, you know, the board's input tonight, but the decision that will be made by the planning commission will be final. Just to be clear about that, so with that, I can answer any questions, and again, Sam Beer is here and can also answer questions or add detail.
Well, everyone knows I have questions. I always have
Looking
questions.
forward to.
So I am curious about the siding, that's the, non-flammable or fire retardant or fire resistant, just out of curiosity. And then are there any gaming units that go through this property? And
Gaming units?
yeah, for like,
I
think it's 45.
is it 45?
It's 49.
49.
49.
49.
Okay. I was just curious, what goes through there.
Would it be helpful to have the CPW recommendations read? Are they
Then the staff report.
retrievable in the staff report? Would it be helpful to have what those recommendations were?
I can speak on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in this, right?
Yep, page 6 of 9 in the staff report.
Okay, restricting human encroachment from April to June 30. I don't know what the details of human encroachment, is that 15 feet, is that 500 feet, I don't know if that's important or.
I think the map, you can kind of see the map that designates the different colors. Not everybody has access to this, but we have a wildlife tool map and it has different colors on it. I could pass this around, and so it does sort of score, and certainly a good, you know, so.
Oh, and then what side of the road did we see where the structure is gonna be, on which side of oh, it's right here, okay. So in the top left area, as you look at it on a piece of paper, I don't know which direction is which, but I'm guessing maybe north
North is
is the
up,
way is up,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Cause there's no compass on that
right,
photo.
But it's south of the road.
right,
Or it's, okay, it's south of the,
in
it's,
west.
got it, okay. That's a pretty steep grade, huh? On that side, maybe? I don't, no, it's not.
20 degrees above it, average slope.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was really the only question that I had, was the siding.
Mm-hmm.
And I might have misread that, cause in the staff report, I think it said gonna use wood siding, and so I was thinking wood siding, but then trying to use materials that are fire resistant, and I was like, wait a second, so I might have read that wrong.
Right. It
And
looks
so I
like,
think it said
it
wood
looks like
looking,
wood, yeah,
yeah, okay.
cool. Yeah, if you're comfortable, the applicant, Sam could,
Yeah,
speak to that.
yeah,
Yeah, so
Presentation.
the product is called True Log siding, so it looks like wood.
Okay.
It even has a texture that's stamped into it,
okay,
and then it's painted metal. So it's from the road, it'll look like logs.
Okay.
I doubt people would be able to really tell a difference.
okay,
Up close, you'd be able to tell that it's a metal product.
okay. Alright, does it have like a fire rating for that, like is it a class A or does it?
I don't have that offhand,
Specify.
but it
Okay.
does. That was the
Okay.
question I asked.
Okay.
So.
And if
And
the
then-
applicant wants to go ahead and read or make their portion of the presentation, then we can continue with questions and public comment. But that way the applicant can go ahead and make the presentation.
I don't have anything other than what I read, Heather, so.
That's
Right,
all.
the applicant can make their presentation now.
Oh,
Go ahead
okay.
and let him
Oh, yeah.
have his, make his presentation.
Sorry, go ahead and make your, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I didn't prepare much of a presentation other than to go over the site plan as it was presented in April. So basically, as an introduction, the actual footprint of the cabin's gonna be under 300 square feet. We really designed it to, as you drive up the road there from both Leadville and Fairplay side, there's ruins of cabins. And that was really kind of the inspiration for the design. We did add a porch and some aspects to make it a little bit more modern. But the siding will be a darker color, just as they were, and the roof will have a metal roof on it, but they'll look like cedar shingles, as the cabins likely would have back in those days. And so it's truly is designed to blend in as, the cabins would have 100 years or more ago. I think everybody's aware of the site and where it is. I will state that there were no geological or mining hazards on the property, so a lot of the properties in that area do have mine pits or sites that the state is working to recover, but that's not the case on our site. It is an average slope on the property of 20% or 20 degrees. However, the spot where we chose to build does kind of level out a little bit, so we mapped it at quite a bit less than that. The county road does pass directly through the property. We have installed a driveway already with a culvert that is compliant with the county standards. All of the property around us is all private property. We don't border any state land. Our site layout is essentially gonna be the cabin facing down the valley. And then we'll have a OWTS tank that will be not far from the structure, buried underground. There's been I've had a couple people ask me about that specifically with concerns of, environmental spills or hazards like that a lot of people are familiar with septic systems. And that is something that we are very conscious of throughout the design process. We're going with a 1,060 gallon poly tank that will be buried, but it will not have any black water in it. It will be, the structure will utilize an incinerating toilet. It uses propane to essentially burn up any waste to the toilet. And that's both liquid and solid waste. So there will be no connection from the toilet to the actual tank. There will be a sink in the structure, and that'll be the primary purpose of that tank. And we do plan on using all eco-friendly products, in the cabin, biodegradable products. So, really, even in the event that the tank, ruptured or something happened, it's, you know, gray water that's already eco-friendly that would not cause any design or any environmental hazard. Matter of fact, I think in some places of the state, they allow that water to be just pumped out on the ground because it is, you know, it is safe to be treated that way. We do plan on taking it off-site. As far as tree removal, the property itself is mostly just grass, prairie grass, so there is some shrubs on the property on the backside of the structure. Our intent is to keep the structure just on the front side of any of the shrubs. We wanna reduce getting rid of any shrubs if possible. There may be, you know, it's hard to, from a topo map, to be able to really map out where the shrubs are in relation to the cabin, so, but we did make our best effort to make sure that we weren't gonna be tearing up a bunch of shrubs, and causing any undue damage. We are going to reseed any prairie grass with native seed from the area after the construction is complete, and possibly do truck-in water as needed to make sure that grass gets a good start and is returned back to the way it used to be as quickly as possible. We did, as noted, consult with Lake County Fire Rescue. We do comply with their recommendations for fire boundaries. I did have an additional conversation that, you know, maybe somewhere in the future we would make an effort to help them out and put in a tank that they could pump off of in case there was a fire in the area. So that's not included in this application, but it is our intent to look into that if the county wants it. That's obviously, you know, an expense that we would take and largely benefiting the county, so that, you know, obviously that would be a conversation and a decision for the county to make, but we did wanna offer that. That was something that the fire marshal sounded interested in, so. As far as fire risk, the primary fire risk in the area would be a fast moving grass fire coming up the valley there. You know, as you all are probably well aware, there's winds that get fairly brisk up through there. And so that would likely push the fire fairly quickly if there was a fire up that area. Our structure with the construction entirely metal exterior would be very resistant to any sort of fire activity, especially one of those fast moving brush fires. And we designed it to be that way. Let's see. There was a concern that was brought up about recently about the wetlands, and I did want to state that we that concern was brought to us, I believe, yesterday, and we did some very, very late night research on that. And we've had 2 civil engineers visit the site. We've had pits dug to verify what the water table looks like under the ground. And both agree that there isn't an issue with our structure. We took it a step further and had a calculation performed on what the potential runoff impact would be from the structure. It's a standard process for a lot of like city design to test how much of an impact the city infrastructure is going to be impacted. And so we did a similar method. So I'll just read the statement here as written because I'm far from the expert on that specific civil engineering. But using the rationale method and impervious values established by Mile High Flood District combined with precipitation data from NOAA, is determined that the structure will increase the runoff by less than 1/10 of a CFS during a 100-year storm event. So essentially what the calculations came out to was, unless you're rounding and using a lot of zeros, it rounds to 0. So there aren't any wetlands on site. There is a seasonal creek that runs down the very corner, but we are well away from that. And the specific area we've chosen to build is not gonna be affected at all. So, yep, I'm open to answer any questions anybody has, to the best of my ability, so, thank you.
Is
So
there-
you're going to do
only under 300 square feet, are you?
We'll be holding public comment for just a minute, the chair will, you will
Yeah.
definitely have an opportunity to ask that question.
So I have
We'll
one
turn it
other,
over to we're gonna turn it, I think Heather's ready to
oh, okay.
take control of the meeting.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And what we'll do now is go through if there's initially any questions from Planning Commission or County Commissioners. And then we will go through the list for public comment.
Yeah, so I just have one other question. Is there any evidence of avalanches in that area? No. Okay,
No, not on the property.
okay. I think that was, oh, how tall is the structure? I don't know if it said that, cause it did say there was a loft inside.
There is a loft, I can tell you exactly how tall it is. Uh, 13'7" to the lower end of the gable, so I'm guessing about 8 inches above that, it'll be less than 15 feet.
Okay.
Probably 14 something.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions from Planning Commission or County Commissioners?
I have two questions. The mainly visual impact related, since this is a pretty touristy area, a lot of people are, trying to go through this area to get away from all things civilization. Just looking at reliefs of the mountains and visual lines of sight, it does not look like this can be seen from anywhere other than once you get up on the pass pretty high. It's kind of a secluded valley up at the top of Weston there.
Yeah, that'd be correct. It's up on, the road comes at a downhill, so when you crest the hill coming from Fairplay, you come down the hill a little ways and you can see it, and then you see it for, a little ways as the road stakes down, but the road kind of turns away and then you can't see it. So it is built close to the road, on that side, so from a distance, it'll be harder to see with the way the road curves.
Okay, so the reason I was asking that is because I noticed the front porch light, and it's always kind of weird when, you're looking way up into the mountains and then there's just a light on up there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's always kind of a weird thing, and I'm like, what is that? Is that somebody driving a car on the pass, or? So I'm wondering if the porch light, I know it will adhere, it's gonna need to adhere to dark sky compliance, but, is that a situation where it would ever be like left on or anything like that? Not really a big deal for me, that one, because after digging, surfing on Google Earth there, I realized there's almost nowhere you can see this from. But, that said, porch lights, as long as that's good with dark sky. The second thing I wanted to touch on, or just bring up for our consideration, how is this gonna be heated? Is you gonna be using a wood stove up there?
No, yeah, those are both good questions. So, first on the dark sky, we're, in addition to, we will comply with the regulations on the lights. We actually haven't, we're discussing a porch light, but we've considered not having one. And then we've also, the whole cabin is gonna be, able to be operated fully remotely. So it'll give us the ability to make sure that nothing's ever left on, because we can just, look on an app and then turn it off remotely, so. And your second question.
With wood stove, cause I'm wondering, sometimes if someone's not running them right, you can get a pretty heavy smoke plume coming up off.
Yes,
off the-
we are not doing a wood stove. We did consider it, my wife and I both have small children, and we do intend on renting the structure out or going that permitting direction after it's completed. And so, especially mostly with our kids in mind, I grew up in a house where it was 100% heated by wood, and I touched that thing more than once. And so, being just a small structure, we thought, it'd probably be just a safer option to run on a system that doesn't have that danger. So, we are gonna go with a propane stove. And it will be a high efficiency propane, externally vented, the most important aspect of that, so there is no CO risk inside the structure because it's, the heating elements and the oxygen that's being burned by the propane is venting out of the structure and not, burning the air in the structure.
Alright, so no giant smoke plumes, no giant spotlights left on overnight. So that's the only two things I wanted to touch on.
So just to clarify, your intention is to rent this place out?
That's what we're discussing right now, and so we haven't initiated those permits, but, for essence of transparency, that's on the table.
So, yeah, go ahead, whoever was about to.
That was me, it was Heather. I think that currently our backcountry standard does not allow for any kind of short-term rentals in the backcountry zoning district.
Yeah, so that's correct. So as I stated, we would have to go through the permitting process for that. And so, right now for the intent of this, hearing and this construction, we're building it as a private structure. And we would not rent it out until the county approved of that.
Right, but I guess what I just want to forewarn you is that zone district does not allow it. So it's not something that just is you have to get the short-term rental license for. It's not allowed and permitted in the backcountry zone district.
Yeah, there are group camp options though, right? So, again, that's, not necessarily the topic
I
for
just
this.
want to make sure you know what the status was before you.
Yes, yep, been very aware of the county stance on the short-term rentals.
So I had one other question, cause you said that cause you're gonna have solar. But when you're not there using it, it's off. Is that
Yeah, so
what I
the way a
understand?
solar system would work is, when it's charged, it's charged, so it's not charging anymore, and so, so there would still be, potential electricity in the structure, but, it's not like there's, anything that would be running off of it is turned off. Again, part of that system that we're planning on having with everything being able to be turned off remotely, everything that can be turned off will be turned off.
Okay, so to, just so I understand, but to run it remotely, something's powered, and I'm guessing you have some kind of Starlink or some kind of access
Yep,
to
exactly.
that? Okay, so that will be attached on the structure as well then?
Potentially.
Okay,
Yeah, that can be, right now, we're just building the structure, so that's, for the intent of this. That's a conversation maybe for a later time.
Okay. Any other questions from planning commission or county commissioners before we go to public comment?
none here.
I have
Uh,
none.
Jason, you'll need to take the clipboard there and run public comment then.
Oh, it's being slid over here. Dave had something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just said I have no comments or questions.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, great.
Okay. Do I have an official paragraph that I'm supposed to say for this part? No?
No.
Okay, so now we'll, take public comment. And, of the people that asked to speak, Harold, does it say yes, or I may have not,
This is Harold.
do you have a public comment?
Yep.
Okay, alright,
Uh,
go for it.
You're going, how many people will you be able to sleep up there?
So you pose your question to the,
How
planning
many
commission.
people will he be able to sleep up there?
And go ahead and go through all of your questions and we'll get.
Yeah, cause we're not supposed to like communicate, but you can ask all the questions and then we can,
Ask anything you would like
Yeah.
to the planning commission.
There is a building up there already, I don't know if you guys know that or not. We went through the public process many years ago, and we have a ski hut up there, it's called the Weston Pass Hut. And we really are not real interested in having competition up on the hill. If it happens, you know.
Any other questions you would like us to get answered?
Was wondering how many people he was planning on, being able to sleep in his
Okay,
300 square foot structure.
okay.
Can I answer that?
Not yet, right?
Yeah, we'll take a
Okay.
public comment and then you can.
I'm not normally the
Take
chair,
everybody's
that would
comments.
be Heather that does that normally,
I'm
so
sorry, Jason, but you're doing a great job.
I'm doing
So we'll
my
just
best.
take each public comment and then the applicant will have a chance to respond to those. All
Got
of
it. Okay, are you done for now? Yes, or that's it, okay. Adam Giffen,
Hi, I'm Adam Giffen.
okay,
I'm one of the partners, one of the 6 partners at Weston Pass Hut. And I was up there last June and July, and I saw notices at that time of, on the property that there was gonna be construction going on there. But I saw where Mr. Beer had put a little road in through the willows, and it was, had a machine in there doing something. But then winter came, and I haven't been up all winter. But I've only, aren't people supposed to have some kind of a notification period for this, when somebody's gonna build something like this? Because I only received information on Mr. Beer's application from one of my partners 3 days ago. And I haven't had time to review all the documents that Mr. Beer has filed. So I'm asking that the board give us a continuation. So, and we're going to be having our annual HUD meeting in the next week. And our partner will be able to make a decision, and we'll have time to look at what Mr. Beer has filed. Because I don't think we've had enough time to consider this application.
okay, is that it?
No.
Okay, well, you still have some time,
I don't
so
necessarily, how much time do I have?
about a minute and a half.
Okay. Our problems with Mr. Beer started last year when we went to every 5 years, we have to renew our water right at the hut. He filed an objection, or his attorney did. And by the time it was all said and done, it cost us over $10,000 in attorney's fees and extra filings with the water board. And then about the time we were getting that straightened out, Mr. Beer accused us of not having our corners of our property in the right location. So he was objecting to where our property line was. And the outcome of that was that he lost on both cases. And now, I just read an email from one of our partners where Mr. Beer is accusing our clients that stay at the hut of trespassing on his property. So I just, wanna let you know that this person has been in attack mode from day one. This just all came out of the blue. It's cost us a lot of money. He wants to build an RV-scape. He's building in a wetland. He's torn out a lot of willows. And I would think that, I'm a little concerned about the other people that own water in Union Creek possibly getting upset about what he's doing in the spot he's at, because he is right down in the, basically, right down in the willows. So I call willows wetlands. He has taken out quite a few, putting his road in. So I'm worried that the other water owners in the basin will get mad, and then they'll come after us too, because we're his direct neighbor to the south.
Okay, thank you very much, that's all the time for you. Okay, and we have one more person, Sam Beer.
Oh, he's
That's me.
Do you,
Oh, I was just, yes.
yes, oh, okay, alright.
And then online, Jason, too.
Oh, and then online, who do we have? Anybody online? Those are the only names that I have on this list.
They could raise their hand. Yeah.
If there's anybody on Zoom who would like to make a public comment, raise your hand or unmute. Eddie Camp, go ahead.
For my comments. I'm also a partner with Weston Pass Hut, and I would just like to say I support Adam's and Harold's questions and comments. The only other thing that I would note, and I would encourage the applicant in the future, is we have been in pretty consistent email contact and also phone conversations. So there wasn't really any reason, I don't think, for us not to get a notice via email or even a phone call to let us know that this was happening earlier. So I think that brings up the same concerns, especially with plans about renting the cabin out later on in terms of how that communication works and the notice that is given.
I thank you. Do you have anybody else online that has a public comment or? At this time, if, I don't know if staff wants to start with a response or you want to hand it to the applicant first for response to all those questions and concerns.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I think the applicant first would make sense.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the first statements were made by, the first statement that was made from a member of the Weston Pass Hut, I think sums up the reason for their sentiment. They feel that I'm going to build a structure that's going to compete with their business. I've heard around the water cooler that their business, it is struggling to some degree. Maybe that is true, maybe it's not, but the way I see this is our intention is not to compete with them. This structure, in its design is wildly different than the Weston Pass Hut. I think they sleep, 10 plus people in their hut. The question was asked, how many people would be in this structure, and we see this as, roughly 4 people at most. Maybe there might be 5, but this is not a, pack a bunch of people in their thing. And as far as, competition to the Weston Pass Hut, that was never our intention. It's not like we saw the Weston Pass Hut and said, let's go compete with that. That's just not our intention, and we're in such, even in the instance that we did rent it out, we're in such vastly different markets in, a structure that sleeps a family of 4 and a structure that sleeps, 12, 10 plus people or whatever the number is. It just does not seem to be, in my mind, competition wasn't our goal, it's not our intention, and I just don't see it as, I don't see it that way. I will correct a couple false statements that were made by members of the hut. One was that the corners, that we challenged the corners and that they were found to be in the same place. That was not true at all. The corner closest to our property, our surveyor marked it, I wanna say 3 feet different than where the hut had the corner marked. Now, I don't think that was malicious on their part. I think it's hard to survey that area. Their survey was done quite a bit earlier than ours, and technology has come a long ways. Different people have different methods. However, as far as the water, we did have a disagreement over the water. The property map that we have, based on the points that we have set, put a structure that they built, the property line goes right through the structure. So half of it's on our property, half of it's on theirs. I made an effort to contact them to have just a discussion about it and to talk about these issues, and I ran into a member of the hut up there, and I said, hey, let's talk sometime, and I was given a phone number. I made multiple attempts to call it, never heard back. But ultimately, every attempt I made to communicate was just left silent. So the only thing I could do was to just go to the court and petition that water that water right. Since then, we have come to an agreement on the water. I think it was a agreement that was great for both parties. I don't think it was an agreement that needed attorneys to be involved. But again, I wasn't the one that drove it that direction. From my viewpoint, that's something that the members of the HUT did. Another comment was made about, not providing them proper notice. The mailing was sent out per the address that the county has on file. And there were 2 addresses for the HUT. A member of the HUT has confirmed to me that one of the addresses is not a good address. The other address, from my research, is a valid address. However, the business name that was given to the county is not the same as the name on the the street address that the post office has. So maybe that is potentially the reason why that was returned. Regardless, I contacted the HUT in April and I asked them for commentary on where I was gonna put the driveway and the structure. This is well before I'd submitted anything to the county. I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'd really like your input, you're my neighbor, I'd really like your input. The email went unanswered for almost a month. So I followed up and I said, hey, I'm gonna put in a driveway permit this week. I need some feedback, if you wanna give it. And I got an email back that said, well, our annual meeting's not for a month, so we'll talk about it then. And so, it was pretty clear to me that it wasn't a high enough priority for them to, meet outside of their annual meeting. And, I was going above and beyond to have a conversation with them, and I literally was going to allow them to select the location on the property where the cabin was gonna be built. And they just didn't wanna entertain a conversation. So, I am sorry that they feel that they did not receive the proper notification, but, from my standpoint, I made an effort to literally ask them to pick where they wanted it, being that they were our uphill neighbor. It wasn't, I really didn't have strong opinions personally about where it went, and that went unanswered. So, as far as, so maybe just to go down the list of questions here, as far as not having enough time to review, it's not the, as much as I made an effort, the board should absolutely not put my permit on hold in order to wait for the snow to clear so that my neighbor can walk my property and decide if they like the location or not. That's, well outside the responsibilities of the board, and it's well outside of, even as a landowner, my responsibility as a good neighbor. The trespassing concerns were brought up quite a while ago. They're concerned that I asked them to speak, sent them an email and I asked them to sit down and have a conversation about it, just among us, and that request was ignored, and I have made multiple attempts to have conversations with them on that issue and other issues, and quite frankly, while we have had some conversations, they just aren't responsive. So I'm sorry that the Weston Pass Hut is not pleased with my construction. I understand it's hard to have a neighbor develop on a piece of property that you guys have put a lot of your time and effort into and spent a lot of time on. I feel as a landowner and as a neighbor that I made a lot of effort to include you guys in the process, and I really feel like my emails went unanswered, and the impression I got from that was simply that you weren't interested in talking. So I think I've covered the majority of the comments here. The last topic I did want to very strongly cover is the building in a wetland accusation. That was a statement made. That's completely false. As I said, we've had 2 civil engineers review it. It's not on, we double checked with FEMA floodplains, we checked any data NOAA had. It's just, we physically were on site to evaluate the actual site of construction, and that's just flat out false. And I think that just about wraps up all the commentary.
What's the proposed occupancy for the unit?
I don't know that we discussed a specific number, but can we propose it here?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll say no more than 5 people?
I thought that your OWTS permit was based on an occupancy limit.
Oh.
So what is your OW, or your variance, what was it limited to?
I don't recall that. I have our, did that come from our plans or from the county?
It was from your engineered plan, I think that your occupancy was contemplated on there.
Oh, okay, so 4 people.
The OWTS that was designed, variance, for the gray water system was, the occupancy of the structure was 4 people.
Okay, thank you. And staff, I think you started out the presentation too, just confirming the wetlands,
Right.
not an issue.
Based upon the mapping we have, it's not in the floodplain or in any wetlands.
And then I just have another question too. So you received a return notice of one of the notices that you sent out to the Leadville Backcountry. Did you notify staff that that was returned?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent a picture of the,
Yeah. The 708, who we have on record is Leadville Backcountry, which I think is the same as, and I noticed, is it Kim Lee was on here? She's the one who notified me yesterday, and we took a look at what was sent, and I talked to Sam about it, I just had this a minute ago. And so I think it was the 708 Mount Massive Drive.
Mountain View Drive,
Mountain View Drive.
Mountain View.
Yeah. I just had
And
that.
so you, when did we
15 days prior is when we sent.
when did we realize that the notice had been returned? Or when did staff?
Yesterday.
We didn't know until yesterday. When did you receive the return mail?
I don't have the exact date.
But
It was
previous to yesterday?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so we have 708 Mountain View Drive and 304 Mountain Harbor Drive, so there were 2 different addresses. And I get the impression maybe neither of them was working, but you only had one return, is that right?
No, they were both returned and they had the reason on it. I looked up with the postal service, both addresses.
Yeah.
One of them was not a valid mailing address per the US Postal website.
Okay,
And the other one, I did research on why it might not have gotten through.
okay,
And the name on the mailing is the business. And that was the best reasoning I could have come up with, because it, again, it was returned, the address was exactly as the county, exactly as the county had provided to me.
right, so as you know, I believe, Heather, that what's required is our best known information, which is the assessor record, which unfortunately is incorrect.
So, but I would maybe just offer that you were aware of who this property owner was, and you did have some previous information and other contact information for them too.
So, and the comment I would make on that is they were very aware that I'm gonna build. I told them I was gonna build this year. We met and I sent them a sheet that said, I literally sent them an email of different options on where we could potentially build. I invited them to have a discussion, told them I was in the process of, permitting. We had a couple Zoom meetings, on different topics, and it was mentioned in those, and so they were very aware, this isn't out of left field. Any attempt to say, oh, I didn't get a mailer, we need to postpone this, is just simply, an attempt to sabotage my permitting.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's unfortunate that we have 2 property owners that apparently aren't getting along, causing this, I guess. And staff, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end of the day, if we have a developer who's sending out a subdivision application and they send it out to 300 addresses, they're not gonna chase down every one of them that has the incorrect address on file with the county. There's not an obligation to do that. It's an obligation that the property owners have their addresses correct within the county in order to have appropriate notification, which is very unfortunate in this situation because it could or could not have been handled outside of that. But I don't know that diving into that this evening is really within our purview. I think that if we sent the documentation to the addresses on file and those are incorrect, definitely a reminder to have everybody make sure their addresses are correct within the county.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Heather, is that, you know, developer notifying 300 people in the immediate area and not getting a response from a few, you know, say 10%, versus not getting a response from 100% of the people that are in the area.
That's not true.
Well,
That's not true.
there's two
There was, I think,
property owners
30
and there were
plus
both
members that went
returned?
there
Oh,
were
okay.
over 30 that were.
Oh, okay, I thought there
They
was
were,
only
they
two,
were,
sorry.
yeah.
No, the Western Pass Huts has 2 addresses that were returned.
Got it.
But
Okay.
everybody else, you know, everything was sent out to everybody who it was supposed to.
Okay, that was my mistake then.
Well, I guess, are there any other questions from staff or information from staff that we need to consider here? Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, the claims that are allegedly false, where was that information coming from? And I guess I would turn this, forgive me, I missed I believe Sam, the Hut members. Where is this information that is being alleged that is apparently not true? Because it seems like a he said, she said situation. And I'm just curious as to how much of this is valid because we're taking one person's word over the other. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And yeah, I mean, if one of the representatives from the Hut have any kind of response on that as far as where your information comes from on like the wetlands information or information.
And I think there was a comment that maybe incorrect, but from my notes that there's not necessarily a wetland, but it's referred to as a wetland because of the type of vegetation that's in that area, I believe. Is that a correct statement?
I think I said that,
Okay,
and that's just, you know, not based on any fact or scientific knowledge that I have.
okay,
But my general impression about the ecology up there is when you have willows, that's wetland. And there's a lot of wetland right where Mr. Veer's road and house are proposed. And from what I saw last July, the last time I was up there, by the way, the road's been closed all winter. It closes, I don't know, around November. And we usually can't get up there till June sometimes, late June, and a couple of years it was until early July. That's when you have a big year.
does that help, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay. We have a question from Kim Lee.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm part of Western Pass Hut. So just kind of speaking to Adam's point, and this is just about like the location of it, is to be clear is that we did have like this, like last year there was a discussion about the water rights and that we have our spring well is directly north of where he's planning to build a hut. And that why is what is I kind of like was this concern as like it's just north downhill from our spring. So it's like there's whether or not you want to call that wetlands or not, it is a wet area. And there's water that runs through there. So the thing is like it's not clear to me exactly where the proposed site is and where the water runs. And so that was one thing is saying that like it'd be nice to actually just like have like eyes up there. That the road is actually you can't actually even access the hut yet or that land by car. And that's why I was asking for a continuation or a postponement on this decision. So to actually get some eyes up there to say like actually the location of where this is and where it is in relation to the water and how it's actually running.
So we need to make sure though that we're just answering, Mr. Hill's question, Ryan, regarding where the information is coming from. So sounds like it's a visual interpretation based on there being vegetation of why it's being referenced as a wetland. Does that sound right, Ryan?
It does. I think as I was hearing both sides of it, a couple of thoughts came up. The first is if any documentation can be produced to object the statements that the hut has made, it would be absolutely beneficial. The other flip side of that is if it can't be substantiated, these guys have been up there for a long time. They know this better than we do. And if there is a valid concern that they have where there is no supporting documentation to object their concerns, I think it is, at least from where I'm sitting, worth considering.
Yeah, I think that was well said.
Can I make a comment to that?
I don't know.
Yes, you may.
Okay.
We
Heather
do,
says yes.
it's submitted with our full site plan, and it is submitted with our OWTS right here that I can show. We have all the wet areas marked. The ditch is the big one you see here. In this zoomed in version, the reason that the spring runoff isn't on the zoomed version on the OWTS, it is on the full site plan. The reason it's not on the zoomed in version of the OWTS is because it's so far away from our proposed structure, it wouldn't have fit on the chart. So it's well outside of the setbacks the county requires. Those were verified by a civil engineer. To say that there is no evidence or that the Weston Pass Hut folks are some experts that, have some sort of credibility. I understand they're a landowner and they're upset that I'm building, but again, we've had 2 civil engineers, we have topo of the entire property. All of the documentation required to show that we are nowhere near that has been submitted, the county has that, and in fact, we are nowhere near the wet areas that they are discussing.
Is that included in the submittal, the environmental review by an engineer?
No, I don't believe so. That report that you submitted to us,
Which report are you referring to?
yeah, it would be good, what you just showed, us in this room, we'll need to get a copy of that.
Yeah, this was, I believe this was this was the resubmittal that I sent in because you guys asked for clarification. Your third-party engineer asked for these setbacks to specifically be marked. And so our engineer went back and did so.
Yeah, that's the OWTS. What I'm asking for is on the site plan for the environmental review, an engineer's statement. I think you read something at the beginning, when this came up in kind of in the 11th hour, that you had engaged with a civil engineer who had provided a report. Do we have a copy of that report with their?
So it's not a stamped report, that was commentary we asked for, and it was, or I asked for, and we went over. And so, I mean, I can provide that text to you
Yeah, that would be good.
in an email, but
Yeah, we need a stamped letter that
again,
would
no,
evaluate
no,
that.
you don't, because it's very clearly that we have very clearly fulfilled the setbacks, that's labeled on our
I'm
plan
not
submittal.
talking about your OWTS, I'm talking about today's hearing for the site plan. You're suggesting on the record that there's evidence that the discovery or the evaluation of whether or not wetlands exist on the property that you have documentation and evidence to that contradicts the allegations today.
No, sorry, what I'm saying is that there are no wetlands and we submitted on our site plan, the setbacks are marked from any drainage ditch or any runoff from that spring they're referring to. So it's not a wetland.
Okay, so what I heard you say at the beginning of the hearing was that when this topic came up and it was alleged the existence of wetlands, that you had a civil engineer review your site and give a conclusion that you read into the record of that, and I'm just asking that that be provided as
Yeah.
part of the record. Whatever you're suggesting, the civil engineer has evaluated your site to say that there is no evidence of wetlands on the property, which you said at the beginning, we just want that evidence that from the engineer.
So yeah, to be clear, what I said is I said that 2 civil engineers have been on the property and viewed the property. And then I read off a statement that was about our calculation of the actual footprint of the property and what the impact on the downstream water flow would be.
Right, so you're talking about the impact of the impervious surface that you are adding
Correct.
with your structure. So there hasn't been evaluation provided by an engineer that would talk about the existence of any type of wetland in the area, so we don't have that, that's all I'm asking.
Right, but it's, I mean, you're asking for a negative, right? Like, you're asking for, like, you have someone that's making this random accusation that there's a wetland, and you're asking me to go pay to have a letter written up and stamped by an engineer to refute that. And that's exactly what they want to do. They have no valid basis to challenge this, but yet you're suggesting you'll give them a continuance based on an accusation with no valid
Yeah,
basis.
so Sam, you're jumping way ahead of ourselves here. Well, the things that you've talked about, I think were clear, we just need to, I need to.
Yeah,
have a
I
copy.
can definitely provide those to you.
Yeah, good.
Yes, definitely.
So at this point, you're relying on the mapping that the county produced or the state produced, showing that it's not in a wetland, is that correct?
Are you talking to Sam or to staff, David?
The staff.
Yeah, so we're going off of the documentation that we have. That isn't the final, you know, we use it as one layer of information. So if we thought it was close to a wetland, then we would probably request that they do additional analysis. There was no wetland on the map that we utilize.
I just have one other quick question for staff on page 3. It says the 234 square foot cabin includes 110 square foot lot for a total of 244 square feet. I'm not like the best mathematician, but I'm confused because wouldn't that be 344 square feet, or am I missing something?
No,
Or not
there's
understanding.
a standard within the code that says that loft areas are not included within
Okay,
the
so is there another 10 square feet somewhere in this cabin that is not being I guess that's what I'm,
No, you're right, my math is wrong. 234 plus 110, I said 244.
okay,
Which would be 344. In terms of including the lot.
but the footprint is
Is
240, 234.
That's right.
Okay, got it, okay. I just happened to notice that, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
So good.
I have one other question, would these structures be seen from each other when they are finished in its
These
entirety?
folks would know better than I.
They would not
I
be,
don't think so.
okay, just curious.
You noticed the steep grade a while ago, I think you had a topo map you were looking at.
Yeah,
Just to the south of Mr. Beer's property is our property, and that first section of our property goes up a pretty steep hill.
okay,
It's quite steep there. In the spring, there's a spring that
oh,
flows.
can you admit Steve, he must have got bumped out, so. Okay, I just wanted to know if they could be seen when they were complete from each other, that's all.
I'd say the answer is no.
Okay,
Unless we go down to the northern end of our property, which is, there you're going down the steep part.
got it, okay.
Jason, can I add one thing, or Heather? Make one comment?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so we do, and I did go through it in my presentation, but it is in the staff report. We do have approval criteria, which might help you. And the analysis kind of goes through, there are 5 criteria that's often our roadmap. that we look at for, you know, how do you make your decision, if there's any confusion about that. I could go through those if you wanted to, but I just wanted to point out that we do have that we, you know, pretty systematically confirmed that these criteria are met. I think that the wildlife piece of this is an important one, but we kind of talked about that as a condition of approval. And even the statements tonight that a lot of times the pass doesn't open until well into June, which really does protect the wildlife in general. But again, these are structures that we are trying to carefully place in the landscape so that there is minimal impact. And so we generally believe that this criteria has been met, but I could go through them, or, you know, if that's helpful, I just wanted to make that, underscore that.
Thank you, Melissa. I think that's a good reminder.
Oh, did you have anything else, Dave, that you wanted to add when you asked the question earlier? I just make sure you got everything in that you wanted to say.
I have nothing further.
If there's no other questions from planning commission or county commissioners, motion to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
I move to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Second.
Favor, aye. Okay, the public hearing portion of the meeting is closed, and now we will just go into deliberations. Everybody's welcome to stay up in the room or online and listen to those deliberations, but we can't take any more public input from that.
Except the Board of County Commissioners, they have to go, correct? Is that-
They do
or
not,
no?
because they are not.
Oh, they're
voting
not
on it.
making the
So
decision.
they are able to continue to be here if they would like to.
They can.
It's been a very long day.
They're invited to do that.
Well, dinner comes to mind.
As much as I like this room, 9, 10 hours gets to be a little bit much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
So we can stay, the
Yes.
public can stay for this part.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They're not gonna accept more comments.
yeah, now we do the weird part where we talk about it, but you're not allowed to talk to us or say anything, whatever. And it's even more strange because I'm the only one up here. So
I'm sorry.
I have to back, some people over there online. And no, but they've done an excellent job when I'm online and they're here, so.
Well, anybody want to start off with their thoughts?
Well, do you want me to do
Does
my
somebody want
thoughts?
to jump into a motion?
Do you want me to do my thoughts in the beginning or the end, or, cause you know, I always have something to say.
You do always have something, go for it.
And then Anne's always like, no, she doesn't really do that. So, after reading the staff report and the intention of the backcountry zoning, there's a couple of things that come to mind. While there is the hut system that's been around for a long time, once the backcountry zoning was adopted, that there was always the potential for some conflict between any new building or any new structures, not building permits, licenses. And that could always complicate things. I'm glad to hear though that you cannot see the structures from each other, cause I think if you start to be able to see those structures from each other, that would be a concern, like what's going on, there's a lot of development happening and whatnot. you know, so far as being as a good neighbor, we've heard things on that, and, you know, there's differing reports of that. I would hope in the future that your closest neighbor, you would, even though if you couldn't, you know, do as much as possible, and it sounds like maybe that was done, but that there's gonna have to be continued, you know, communication in many instances, especially if there's an emergency and whatnot, things of that nature, so I think it's just, you know, trying to do your best. You know, everybody wants a piece of the backcountry, everybody wants a piece of anything, so. You know, that's all I just wanna say about that. Heather and Dave and Ryan and Steve, that's all I just wanted to throw out there to kick things off.
No, I agree with those. Those were great statements. I think it is tough when we have adjacent property owners with the contention that seems to be happening in this situation. So, but if we purely look at what our findings need to be in order to approve a backcountry zoning structure, especially something around 300 square feet, I think that has to be our focus for the evening.
Do I have the floor?
Go for it.
From both sides, I think that as it relates to the backcountry, the impact that it has on the environment and the guidelines that we are ultimately following from our comprehensive plan, I am concerned as to the impact. It just sounds like from respectively both parties that we do not have enough information, at least from where I'm sitting. And although there are boxes that have been checked, to make a decision on this that we later look in the rear view and say, oops, I wish we would have looked into this or considered this a little bit more heavily rather than checking a box to get it off our agenda. It just doesn't sit well with me. That's just my thoughts on it.
So which items are you looking at?
Wetland items.
Okay. And what would we want to, if we were to table it, what would we be directing staff as far as what that investigation should look like?
Deferring this over to Anne potentially, you know, do we have the necessary documentation to satisfy some of these concerns?
Well, we don't have evidence that we would feel strongly supports the allegations that this is within a wetland. You know, there's evidence that, you know, there is evidence of the spring runoff from Mr. Beer's OWTS application site plan, and I believe I didn't process the other file, but there was an analysis done of the site, so none of our mapping data would support that this is consistent with being in a wetlands. And based on the OWTS site plan, there's no evidence of wetlands. And on, I believe, the application that was submitted that Melissa processed, there's no basis for us to suggest that further investigation needs to be done in respect to that.
Right, it didn't come up based on the mapping that we have primarily, and I guess the variance added to that.
Right, so a suggestion of this and maybe some impacts that there, you know, certainly there are some low areas, there may be some runoff within this area, but we don't have anything, Ryan, that would have triggered any kind of review from staff to say we need a delineation of the wetlands because we have evidence that they exist in somewhere, whereas our mapping is not an exact science. It certainly indicates areas that wetlands would be present, and as far as an actual delineation of them, we would need expertise in helping to delineate them, but we don't have any evidence that I can see that's been brought forward that would suggest that they exist.
To that end, what's the probability that we are wrong with the information that we have?
Well, I think there's a pretty strong reliance on the information that we have to suggest that there isn't a need for further investigation. How do you feel about that, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't come up until now, and I recognize that there's a lot of willows, it's at top of a pass, it's wet, it gets really wet, it sits under snow a good portion of the year, and so, a next step would be to hire an engineer, and there are engineers who can evaluate, and it sounds like you've had some on site that have given their opinion, but there is an investigation that could be done to make a final determination. We didn't go there because nothing got flagged that there would be a concern.
And what's the particular entity that defines wetland or controls those wetland maps? I don't know if that's.
So there are engineers that can come out and do those
Okay.
delineations.
So there's not a
Or
regulatory.
geotech,
There
like
is.
a geotech company can do them,
Okay.
like Kumar and Associates can
Yeah,
do
there are
them.
companies that do those, the US Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
Has
Sees the
wetlands, yeah.
Okay.
delineation, so
At whose expense is it?
it would be at the applicant's expense.
Yeah, it'd be the applicant's expense if we ask them to provide evidence that the site, the building site does not impact any identified wetlands, which are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, while we're talking about it, for this included, for anything going forward, why is that not part of the process?
It is
Okay.
part of the process when wetlands are readily identifiable within an area. The backcountry site plan review is meant to evaluate the parcel and any type of hazard that may be, or an environmental sensitivity that the site may have. That is the basis of this. So initial investigation, the only allegation that we have is the adjacent property owner's knowledge of the area, which we don't dispute is extensive for the time that they've owned the property. That's the only basis that we would draw on to assert this further investigation. But there hasn't been any other evidence provided through the submittal requirements that would suggest this is a needed step other than the experience from the adjacent property owner.
And there are many places in the county where there are sites that we can see on the map, there's wetlands relatively close. And when that's the case, then we do question that and sometimes require additional analysis. So it definitely comes up, and in those cases we would.
Fair enough.
Any other discussion from other planning commission members?
No, I don't, maybe just briefly going through the approval criteria, just as how does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
I would agree.
All right, did you wanna do that?
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah,
Sure. Yep, there are 5 criteria for approval. As you can imagine, and in most cases, the first one has to do with our comprehensive plan, which is what we often look toward. And this area is designated as rural and remote in our comprehensive plan. So that's described as an area where there are no urban services, and basic infrastructure is really not available. And so this is a really good example of the kind of use. that we might see in this designation. And the backcountry zoning, which the site is zoned for, reflects that. So we believe this does comply with our comprehensive plan. The second one has to do with conformance with the code. And in this case, what we were looking at were that the application mitigates any adverse impacts on the environment and the conservation of open lands. So looking at sort of the wildlife habitat component of this and the importance of the recommendations to really, again, protect this highest quality habitat, particularly in the springtime when the snow is still melting and we have the elk and bighorn who are, this is their calving ground. So that was the comments that we got from CPW and our condition of approval. Number 3 has to do with addresses. That the site plan adequately addresses submittal requirements, which were done, or we wouldn't be here tonight. So, number 4 has to do with harmony with neighboring land uses. Fortunately, it doesn't say land owners. Little land use humor there. But, so we do believe that this is in harmony with other land uses, again, very low density, very small structures in an area where we've zoned it backcountry with the idea of, kind of moving gently into how do we occupy these really high alpine environments. So we believe it is consistent with our backcountry zoning. And then the 5th item has to do with potentially, are there any natural hazards? And again, what was affirmed is that there's no geologic mining, there's no mining or environmental hazards in this particular area. So, yeah, and I think fire mitigation is another really important part of that. And again, the materials that are being used and the idea that the propane that will be used gets carried off each time they leave the site is a really important part of protecting this high alpine environment. So those are the 5 criteria.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Heather, sorry.
No, I was just thinking, Melissa, that was helpful.
I got a question.
Okay.
And this is more directed towards Chris. I see Chris is on the call. Chris, you there?
Yes.
Are we recused from any implications of a potential lawsuit that might be filed against us if we're wrong on the impact of the environment?
Ryan, I am going to just say that I am not going to give legal advice to my client in a public meeting of that nature. I'm happy to take that question offline.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't have a follow-up for that. Thanks, guys.
My guess is that we're never out of the clear completely on any decision we make here. I think that the code that we have is definitely not perfect. There are sections of it that need adjusted and things that we learn along the way. I think that the decisions we need to make are with the most information we have at the time. If there had been any data or any other actual concrete information that says, hey, this could be detrimental to the environment, then I would be more in favor of putting the applicant through the costs and expenses of additional engineers. But with the situation that occurs, and quite honestly, I hope that it gets resolved with the 2 property owners, is that it's tough to make a determination on this application when all of the data that we do have that is not coming from a neighboring property owner speaks to the fact that this is it's not in a sensitive space. to the point. I mean, everything's gonna have some sort of an environmental impact, but this is, there's no data that we have in front of us other than data that shows that it's not in an environmentally sensitive area to build in. The precedent that we could face if we were to continue this application and put the onus on the applicant to hire engineers and such when we don't have any data that points to that, I think is problematic, maybe more so than the chance of being wrong on this situation. So I think that's just something I would be hesitant about. 300 square foot cabin also is one of those that I feel like we can think through. This is a small thing, and hoping that our data is correct and things can work and hopefully harmoniously with the landscape and with the neighbors, I think would be awesome. With the data that we have here and the work that staff has done so far, I don't see how it doesn't meet the approval criteria.
Heather, may I just offer too that the adjacent property owner may be really helpful in identifying some natural drainage that's naturally occurring on the site and may just help Mr. Veer consider it as they're evaluating their site placement. Again, you know, what you were speaking of is the fact that you're not increasing the drainage, the historic drainage. You have zero impact on the natural occurring drainage, and of course, we always want to see that you're properly mitigating that or controlling the drainage. So great analysis on that. And what I think that the evidence is showing moreover is a natural occurring drainage that may just help inform Mr. Veer in considering site placement.
Agreed. Very well said. Thank you.
Heather, Steve,
Yes,
can I speak?
go for it.
And- for two.
Oh,
Can you hear?
no, you're cutting out really badly.
Okay, I'll table it. Whole table.
Okay, do you want to try a chat?
Nope. I'll take that important.
Okay. Any other questions or comments and or motion discussion?
I just have one other question on maybe I missed it, but the addressing that was gonna be down the hill, was that, how would that be marked? Like, what would the address be, or would it be the?
Yeah, in our mapping department, we have, that's where we generate addresses. So we'll
Okay.
generate an address and work with the property owner on where to place that.
Okay, and is there one currently for the hut, which I'm guessing is the same way to get to
I imagine they have an address.
the location? There's one
Same road.
displayed, okay, okay. But it sounded like there's two directions you can get there from.
Well, east and west side of the pass,
Okay,
right? I think is what was said,
so is the requirement then only from the Lake County side?
right,
Okay,
cause it is in Lake County.
okay. I don't have anything else. Heather, I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion.
I hope someone does.
All right, this is Dave Church. I move to approve the permit application with the conditions as stipulated.
I second.
Great, thank you. Staff, do we need to read the full motion, or because it's in the staff report, we're good with that?
I think we're good with the motion that was read into, that was put on the record.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'm gonna do roll call vote. Jason Rufo?
Here, or am I,
Yes.
oh, voting,
Yes or
aye.
no? Yeah, or aye. Steve Stevens?
Aye.
Ryan Hill?
Aye.
David Church?
Aye.
Heather Lind, aye. All right, the motion passes. Okay, I think that's all we have on the agenda. Now I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 And staff just would really like to thank you all. I know this was a hard week to schedule, and a meeting in, and so thank you all for showing up and participating. So thank you so much. I'm sure the applicant is appreciative of that as well.
Very much so.
So.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.